Content warning. Women's autonomy. This episode breaches into some real-world issues, because yes, Werewolf is inherently political, and the Moot is absolutely ground zero for such discussions. We snuck out, because we're terrible people. I mean, we left a note for Jill in case she woke up. I honestly don't remember what bad excuse we gave for Jane's unexpected absence, but it was designed to buy us some time. Sarah even asked a favor from a spirit bird thingy to keep watch and come get us if it's some movement in the house. With that, we found our way into the backyard, shifted into Lupus, and dove through Firehound's loose boards. The ones that weren't loose at all 2 days ago, until he got tired of jumping over the fence. To be fair, this was much more stealthy, so we used it up until Jill found out and got it fixed many months later. We made our way to the sept, howling upon arrival into the barn so that the nearby guardians would let us through. By now the Lupus pack knew Jane's scent well, and it wasn't as difficult to get them to let us pass. Although, I suppose the fact that the moot was about to start probably helped speed things up. Everyone loves a good moot. When we got to the gathering area, there was food and drinks and laughter and growls aplenty. Most of the sept was already there aside from the guardians, keeping watch for as long as possible before rushing here. Even a few guests were present, including our good friend here, Stormy Pete, a galliard from the Sept of Concrete Binds in Quebec.
Hi.
The sept who gave us the picnic tables I mentioned. There weren't any kinfolks, however. Moots usually take place on a full moon, making us a little edgier than most days, and the last part of the evening, called the Revel, is just a dangerous time to be near us. If you don't easily regenerate, you shouldn't be there. Wise septs keep the kin far away, or give them guns and let them patrol instead of the guardians. It's just safer. We witnessed happy Garou of all shapes shooting the breeze, telling jokes at each other's expenses, and calling out challenges left and right. Not real ones, those would come later, but fun ones, just for kicks. Who can howl louder? Who can throw farthest? And who can sing the most off-key? I wanted to bring Jane here because I wanted her to see us getting along. I wanted her to see us on our good side, when we're all joined together from the same cause. I wanted her to see Dreadhorn and Stormclaw side by side with a mug in their hands, smiling. "What are we celebrating?" Jane asked when she settled with a pack on a picnic table we'd just earned for the night after Gloria had won an arm wrestle challenge for it. "Everything," Gloria answered in good cheers. "Indeed," concurred the wolf. "While accurate," I chimed in, "it's not very specific, is it? Let me unwrap that particular bit of Garou culture for you." I got up to lean on top of the next table. We're celebrating the pulse of our sept, the spirits that have led our way, the strength of the bonds that unite us in love and hate, the tales of glory, honor, and wisdom that have won the day, and most of all, we are celebrating the sept's patron and the gnosis that flows through all things. She looked at me quizzically. "See, you say you're going to unwrap it, and then you show me a pretzel made of pretty words." We all laughed. Even Firehound chuckled. Although, go figure if he even had a clue what a pretzel was. It was just one of those fine nights, you know, a warm breeze, a blazing fire, and the best friends in the whole damn world. I'm tearing up remembering it. "Fair," I conceded. "But that's because I can't just tell you. A moot isn't like a birthday party. I could explain the nuances, but it has to be experienced. It's not just a gathering with friends. It has depth and meaning on a spiritual level that connects us to Gaia and to this very cairn in the most intimate ways." I was interrupted by the summons. Everyone lifted their heads and howled to let it be known that the beginning was upon us. Less than 5 minutes later, everyone was gathered within a ring of a half-dozen large campfires. There was nothing but silence, even though we were all giddy with anticipation. echo of a distant voice padded forward to the center of the gathering, pacing around, studying each of us intently. The lupus moved slowly and with purpose. She knew all eyes and ears were on her, but that's not why she made us wait. She was born a wolf. She had no reason to hog the limelight or any notion of what limelight was. No. She was taking the pulse of the entire sept, all of our body language, our tension, our wants and needs, all of our rage and anger. She was taking it all in, looking for the right time and the right person to start. As the master of the howl, she was in charge of the first part of the moot, the opening howl, which would resound loudly, telling the world what we were all about. But the howl is more than just screaming at the top of your lungs. Done right, the howl has nuance. It tells a story. If a sept has recently suffered a loss, it would be a sorrowful affair, or if there was a recent victory, it could be a grandiose one. It didn't just express who we are, but who we are now, right at this exact moment, what we are feeling collectively. But for that, it had to start right. She stopped, sitting on the hindquarters in front of the worm foe, Thunderdrop. He had lost family in the massacre a few weeks back. He would start the song. She lifted her head back and let out a soft howl, just enough to gently nudge him into letting go of his pain. He lifted his head too and let out pure anguish. Unprompted, his packsmate joined him on the same tone and pitch. If anyone didn't know about his loss yet, now they did. She gave him leave to grieve, and his packmates expressed that they were there to support him. All of that without a single word being uttered. Have I ever told you that lupus galliards are freaking wonderful? His howl was long and soulful. Just before he and his pack were done, Echo stopped in front of Jane. Her expression here was playful. So was the soft howl she gave Jane to lead her into the song. Jane looked at Thunderdrop, taken with grief. She nonetheless took the lupus's lead with her own howl, one that was full of vibrant life. My pack, along with Sarah Suncal or somewhere nearby, backed her up. One by one, Echo soon added voices to this chorus, until everyone had pitched in. Without enunciating one single word, Echo was speaking through the sept itself. She was saying, though lives were lost, we have gained a new warrior among our ranks. Life comes and life goes. It is to be cherished while it is there, and remembered when it's gone. This community stands together through good or ill. Together we cry, together we fight, together we stand. It was a truly beautiful, uniting moment. I saw tears that night. Tears of joy, tears of sorrow, tears of absolutely everything. For in this instant, we were all one sept. Later I would explain that this indescribable feeling of oneness is what the world feels like at all time for werewolves like Sarah, whose attunement to Gnosis was leaps and bounds above the norm. Gnosis permeates all things, flows through all of us. Individuals like that could feel every blade of grass, could feel every leaf grow under the sun. They can feel everything. That is Gnosis. It is the essence of life. And that's why we tried to say that the Moot is about everything. Because the Moot Rite is all about that feeling, pushing the entire sept to get it all there and vibrate with this same intense energy, elusive, indescribable gnosis, the energy of passionate spiritual oneness. Because once a month, when we do that, and if we do it right, all that raw pathos, that energy we jive to, feeds right back into the cairn, giving it life for one more lunar cycle. We get to give back to our cairn, to its spirit patron, and to Gaia. The sept's voice died out, with Echo giving us the closing note. Silence once again reigned on the clearing. The moot had begun.
Homins often say that they admire our ways of telling stories without words. Yet how many have you used to express what Echo did with none?
Well said. Sadly, I may admire it, but I cannot pretend to have that talent. Quite the contrary, my friend. I could never do what you do, or what Echo did back then.
Listening to your stories is like watching the stars traveling in the skies. They are everywhere, but stand in one place forever.
But, like the starlit sky, it fills you with wonder at the beauty of it all.
That it does.
Thank you. I think? Where was I? Ah yes, the opening owl had just concluded. The time had come for the second part of the moot, the inner sky. Enter Vivid Keen, the second most important thurge on the sept of Shadows by Firelight. As Faye walked towards the middle of the gathering, half a dozen werewolves shifted Carnos and made their way outside the circle of campfires. Once in position, 6 werewolves, known as the Shining Ones, put on elaborate masks depicting different things like animals or objects. Every month, they all made new masks by hand, reflecting upon themselves who they are as a person, and mirrored that upon their masks. Every sept do things differently. Some don't even have Shining Ones, but here we do that because our sept spirit patron is Chimera, who asks us to question ourselves and search for our true selves. By this action, the Shining Ones choose a face, which represents the fruit of their reflection. This is part of the ritual and ensures that Chimera itself is with us. And by standing outside the circle looking in, this symbolizes the patron watching over us and guides us. When Faye felt the gaze of Chimera upon her, Faye addressed the audience. My dearest septmates, from the newest arrivals to the wisest elders, in your name today I thank our guiding light, Chimera, whose kindness and wisdom has never led us astray. Chimera says to us to trust ourselves, to look deep into our hearts and find our truths. This we do every day as a personal duty, but today I say we do it as a community. We are undeniably a fractious lot. As individuals, we are divided by ideology, by tribe, by breed. That is perhaps the nature of the beast, for beasts we are. A werewolf can never truly hide that, even those born on 2 legs. But as a community, we are of one heart, as the opening howl just demonstrated beyond the shadow of a doubt. Tragedy struck the city where our kinfolks live, and some of us have felt that bite tear off their flesh more than most. But all of us here want the same thing. As individuals, we may give it different names: revenge, retribution, justice. But as a group, we call it duty. All of us will play a part in this tale, even if that part is that of guardian. Even if your claws never run red with the blood of the culprit, you'll sacrifice by staying here, protecting the Karen means others can leave with their minds free of concern, knowing this most sacred of places is safe. United in this one task, that is what we are as our truest self as a community. That is what Chimera wants us to know and remember as we face the challenges ahead of us. For this wisdom, I thank it. There is another thing in which we are united: grief. And so, Sarah and I have reached out to Owl, the wise patron spirit of the Silent Strider tribe, and I thank him too for the blessing he has bestowed upon us for the coming days. None know more about the mysteries of death than he who stands ever watchful of the restless. To us, he has sent spirits from his own brood to help us grieve and assist the deceased in finding their path to their final destination. The twice-born, they are called, are a rare kind of spirit which only happen when the spirit of a mouse, eaten by an owl, travels from the underworld back to the spirit world. They know well all the paths between life and death beyond, for they have traveled them before. From within her robe, she produced a tiny, skeletal mouse with shining yellow eyes. If you see these, Faye continued, as you travel the Umbra in the coming days, or their mortal brethren in the physical world, be kind to them, for they are doing us a great kindness. Faye spoke to the adorable little creepy guy and then let the mouse go. It ran through the crowd, which cheered as it went. Vivid Keen addressed the crowd once more. Secrets are cherished among the twice-born. If any of you wishes to express their thanks, should you find yourself in their company, consider letting them in on a secret or two. It will make their day. Faye grew silent and walked back into the crowd. The second part of the Moot, the inner sky, in which we give thanks to our spirit allies, was over. Everyone retreated outside the circle of fires. Everyone but the Sept's truth catcher, who would be handling the next part of the Moot, the cracking of the bone. This part of the Moot is the meat of the whole affair. A whole lot of things are stuff in here. First, this is where the Sept brings up challenges, if someone feels they were wronged, or wish to challenge someone for their positions. Sure, you can do that at other times, but this is where to do it if you want to make it very public. Second, this is where concerned Garou bring up problems that needs to be addressed. Are we low on food? Are there suddenly Fomori and Black Spiral dancers running around town? That kind of thing. Raised concerns usually then lead to a planning phase where we discuss what we're going to do about it. And finally, justice. If someone wants to accuse someone else of any wrongdoings or insult, this is when that happens. For that particular Moot, we already had a plan to deal with the dancers, so the Sept was mostly brought up to speed about our pack and how Jane would go undercover as herself. Other concerns were brought up, of course, but none that has any bearings with our story. Except, there was one event worth mentioning, especially in light of recent developments. Near the end, Vivid Keen stepped up and demanded justice. Not for the Sept, not for Fairpack, not for the Garou law, but all the women in town. See, if you were under any kind of illusion that modern discussion about gender and women's anatomy are anything new, let me dispel that. The discussion has evolved. The pieces of this incredibly complex social puzzle has moved about. But the fight has raged for a long, long time. The Black Fury tribe have always been at the forefront of those discussions, fighting every day to make the world a better place. I encourage you to recall my friend Stormy Pete here.
Oh God, oh no, not that.
Oh yes, that. As you may remember, Stormy Pete here and some of his bone-gnawer pals back then from the Sept of the Concrete Bonds were present that day as a guest. Some few months prior, Pete had led a group of like-minded individuals to storm and ultimately blow up a factory up north, which was a source of foul pollution and worm corruption. It was a huge mess of epic umbral proportions. Destroying the place, big win. Very much, yeah. But, and here's a lesson for all you trigger-happy Garous here today, actions have consequences, often unforeseen. As I've said it before, and I will say it again, it is not enough to blow up the minions of the worm and call it a day. In this particular instance, one of the unforeseen consequences was that the board of CEOs were heavy donors to local clinics that today we'd call pro-choice. Forced to reinvest due to the loss of that factory, donations ceased, and most of them couldn't afford to stay open anymore. Now, I'm not saying you can't fight the worm, but I am saying these things are never so simple as to be fixed with a simple explosion. You have to fight smart and be ready to clean up. The worm does harm in many ways, and if you destroy one door, it will infect 5 more. So with that in mind, Vivid Keen came at him livid with anger. They both stepped into the circle of fire, joining the truth catcher, Anthony Sharp Eyes, who would hear the crime and mete out judgment. Faye listed all of the women, at least those Faye knew, who couldn't be safely aborted in the last few months, a couple of whom had some permanent damage because of that. Some Faye had tended to herself. In the end, a challenge was issued to which Stormy Pete wisely yielded, offering compensation.
By Gaia, Horace, you're butchering this. What about my legendary rant?
I mean, yes, I know. There are children here. I can't repeat all that.
Seriously, please don't. I still have nightmares about that rant.
Yeah, well, I stand by what I said.
And you should, Vivid. I agreed with you then, and I still do. But can we please not recite the thing verse by verse?
Fair enough. Let us simply say that since that day, we began working even more closely with our friends from the Sept of the Concrete Bonds. There was truly no way to repay such a debt, so instead Pete and his pack began working with Vivid Keen, calling in a few favors, making some spirit deals. Within a year, a new clinic was opened. It wasn't much, but it made a difference, while they were able to keep it running. With the cracking of the bone over, the truth catcher receded back into the crowd. Everyone broke into multiple groups around one of the fires, sitting down for my favorite thing in all of the world. The 4th part of the moot, stories in song. Here, the Sept's galliards each took a fire and proceeded to tell the gathered Garou all about the most recent exploits as well as glorious legends of old. Some brought out drums or guitars, breaking into song with their latest compositions. All the while the tale singer, which is the best galliard on the Sept, would pass from one fire to another, listening to all the new stories and the best songs. Now and again, she would draw the crowd's attention to one fire in particular, and we'd all listen to the best bits on offer that night. After a few hours, we would all stand outside of the circle again, turned towards the tale singer in the middle of the circle. She'd then proceed to recount 1 or 2 of her own best stories, all of which is designed to rile up the Sept, to psyching us up, to fill us with inspired vigor, all in anticipation of the next and final part of the moot, the revel. During the revel, the wormfoe shifts into lupus, biting our heels, growling awake those who would have dared to doze off, all in the intent to drive us to the edge of frenzy, but not quite too far, supercharging us with a furious passion, raw gnosis, which we discharge into the Sept by running on all 4, charging into every nook and cranny of the Sept, hunting for anything and anyone with no business there. Usually, that's an infiltrated bane, a monster that managed to get a foothold without us noticing, but we're not exactly reasonable at that point, so as I said, it's best not to have any kinfolk around. The whole entire point is to let all of our energy go. While self-control isn't part of that package, it's still a big no-no to succumb to an actual frenzy and attack another Garou during the revel, so don't do that. And that was that. The moot was done. With the fires within our hearts, the cairn was energized for another month. It was time to bring a very exhausted Jane back home. Tomorrow, the investigation into the Black Spiral Dancers would resume. But for now, I was happy to see that Jane had had a wonderful time. She'd met new friends. She'd seen us at our best. She'd seen us work through our differences in a respectful and structured manner. Best of all, she'd hunted on all fours with more than 20 werewolves having her back. For all the lows that life sends us, that is a high you don't quickly fall from. Just like the cairn, Jane would be energized and ready to face anything. This has been A Right to Remember Season 2, Episode 2, a series of lore videos for Legacy Werewolf the Apocalypse presented through an immersive narrative. The Moot Rite is a truly unique experience. Easily some of my best memories of running Werewolf LARPs have been role-playing through the Moot Rite. Be warned, some players love it, but others hate it. If your players are into the culture of the Garou and don't mind a game that's all about immersion and feels, the Moots are for you. If your players just can't wait for the next fight, maybe it's not for them. Werewolf is something for all types of players. It's a matter of gauging interest and giving them what they crave. If you want to try giving Moots a go, you may be disappointed to hear that W20 doesn't cover it much, which is a damn shame. Your best bet, if you want to read more about it, would be to get your hands on the revised edition book called Player's Guide to the Garou. The section on the Moot Rite begins on page 115, but I suggest you start with the Sept positions on page 110 first. It will help you tell apart the various jobs that interact with the Moot. It's worth mentioning that I find the revel makes very little sense. The Garou spend so much of their time and resources making sure nothing gets past their defenses. If anything does manage it, it's not going to just sit and wait a month until the next revel for the Garou to find it, so what the hell do werewolves actually hunt then? Especially if you look on page 109 of this same Player's Guide to the Garou, where you can see that it is a disadvantage of Cairn ranks 4 and above that the worm actively tries to destroy your sept and is aware of it, where it is, and, has a plan about it. As in, the majority of septs might be attacked occasionally, but certainly not enough to have stuff infiltrated inside every month. One possible answer to that, even if the books don't really say that, is that they actually go out of the sept and raid places they've previously established hosts Banes or Fomori. The problem with that is that it kind of implies that the Garou will expel all of that energy that they've gathered throughout the ritual, not on the sept. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense from the viewpoint of the ritual itself being about channeling all that energy back into the sept. Which is why my favorite answer to that is the rite of the sacred hunt. Despite being a rite, you will not find it in the rite section. Despite being specifically mentioned as something done at a moot, you won't find it mentioned in the moot section. You will actually find it under gaining and regaining Gnosis, in the traits section on page 146 of the core book. Yeah. Anyway, the concept of that rite is that the sept summons an Engling, a spirit whose entire purpose is to be hunted during the moot. Whoever manages to catch it and kill it will see all of their Gnosis replenished. Don't worry, it's a spirit. It'll just reform. If you're struggling to find something for your players to kill inside the bond of their own sept, that's one easy solution. Speaking of replenishing Gnosis, talking about energizing the sept with passion and whatnot, it's all well and good, but you may be wondering how it works mechanically. Simple. The Garou in the sept need to donate a total of 5 points of Gnosis per rank of the cairn. So in the example of the smallest of cairns, a rank 1, you'll only have to fuel 5 Gnosis into it among your group of 1 to 10 werewolves. On the other end of the spectrum, a rank 5 cairn would need a total of 25 Gnosis to be donated by the 25 to 40 werewolves usually living on one of those. What happens if you don't? Well, it depends on which book you read. In one book it says every month that goes by without replenishing the cairn will cause it to shrink down 1 rank until it becomes dormant. The player's guide says it goes immediately dormant if you skip even 1 month. Go for whichever suits your story best, but bear in mind that if your cairn goes dormant, the spirit patron leaves and you'll need to do another rite of cairn building to awaken it again, and that is no easy feat. One last bit. In W5, moots have been downgraded to social gatherings between werewolves. That's it. Doesn't even have to be at a cairn. Can be anywhere multiple Garou packs meet to handle business. Be that planning a strike, dueling, or thanking a spirit. The text is super vague and allows for a lot of leeway into what form they take. While they no longer have anything to do with recharging a cairn, they still can incorporate your favorite elements of legacy moots if you are so inclined. You do still need to power the cairns, however, but this is now done with the Rite of the Living Cairn. As an extension of this topic, W5 no longer has set positions, or rather they are not detailed. There is one part of the text that mentions the existence of a single station, but none of them are explained. It's just not in the book. They probably still exist, but what they do at a sept or anything at all about them is just not known, at least not at this time.